Tales from a Jurassic World, Season 3, Episode 1. Welcome to BioSyn.
Ben, up here! Quickly!
Ben Morrison heard the call from up ahead as his partner, Natalia Diaz, clambered up the hill in front of her and moved deeper into the forest around them. She was a relatively young woman in her early 20s, undertaking her first role in the Fish and Wildlife Service, and her enthusiasm was matched only by her passion for the natural world. She loved spending time in nature and was always excited to show visitors to the national park how they could get the most out of their visit. She was less fond of days like today, however, when both agents knew they were about to come a little bit too close to the animals which had been plaguing the area in recent months.
Nat, slow down.
Morrison called back, his foot slipping on a branch underneath him and sending him tumbling to his knees. Morrison's tranquilizer rifle clattered to the floor and he cursed under his breath. He scooped the rifle back up and checked to make sure it was still functional before he got to his feet and sprinted the last few meters up the hill, cresting the horizon and joining his partner. She was stood, her tranquilizer rifle held by her side with one hand, looking at the clearing in the woods which was now in front of them. It was clear that she was in a state of shock.
The kids who reported this weren't kidding. This is... God. It's probably the worst one we've seen yet.
This isn't good.
In front of them, a once functional campsite sat in a state of ruin. The two tents, one a light blue and one orange with red highlights, sat torn and shredded, their canvas walls lacerated and their roofs caving inwards, allowing debris from the forest to creep inside. In the middle of the tents was what had once been a campfire, metal pots and pans and cooking equipment now strewn amidst pine needles and other vegetation from the trees around them. Here and there bits of equipment sat untouched. An old hiking boot, half laced up, lay on the ground, and further towards the tree line a torn jacket and a rucksack could be seen, the latter spewing what looked to be a protein bar and a half-drunk bottle of water onto the ground. What was most prominent amidst the chaos, however, were the dark crimson splatters which could be seen on the ground and on the sides of the tents, faded now, but still prominent in the golden rays of sunlight which illuminated the clearing.
Control. This is Agent Diaz. We've found the encampment. No sign of any survivors. We'll move to investigate and then request a recovery team. Over.
Copy that. We'll make sure we have a team on standby to meet you at the park entrance. Stay safe out there. Control out.
Diaz knelt down for a moment, peeking inside one of the tents with her rifle shouldered as she attempted to see if there was anything inside. Morrison watched warily behind her, his rifle gripped tightly in his hands as he scanned the trees around them, watching for any sign of movement.
Have you heard much from Fran since her promotion?
Not too much, no. I guess she's been busy.
You two were close.
Cut it out. We've got work to do, Agent Diaz.
Yes, sir.
Diaz replied mockingly with a half salute before getting up to cross the campground. She went over to the campfire and began to pick through the pots and pans, looking at them to see if she could get a better idea of what had happened. Failing to take anything away from the scene, she stood up and went over to the backpack and torn jacket, kneeling down next to them. She looked around them for a moment, perplexed, and then spotted a print in the ground. She leant over it and then turned, motioning to Morrison.
Ben, I've got something.
Before Morrison could move to join his partner, there was a low growl from the tree line, and a gigantic, lumbering creature emerged from the trees. It stood on 4 powerful muscular legs, and at the end of each leg were a set of powerful claws which could easily tear through things. There was a slight hump to the animal's back, and it had small rounded ears which led into a tight face, alongside a jaw which concealed a sharp set of teeth, complete with long, devastating canines. The black fur completed the image of the creature, making it clear that Morrison and Diaz were face to face with one of California's many black bears.
Bear, move!
Morrison raised his rifle, but he was too late. The creature lunged forward, and before Diaz could respond, she was sent flying by the mass of the animal, smashing her head against the rock on the ground of the campsite. She let out a scream as the animal lurched over her, roaring at her before it attempted to reach for her neck with sharp claws. Morrison stepped forward and fired a round from his tranquilizer rifle, striking the animal in its belly. It let out another ear-splitting roar and turned to face him, galloping towards him on all fours. He rolled out of the way and the animal barreled into the woods behind him. He twisted, loading another tranquilizer rifle round and firing it, and the animal let out another growl before it turned, sprinting away further into the woods. He took a second to load the rifle again and got to his feet, moving towards Diaz.
That was close. You okay?
Ben, help.
As Ben got closer, it was clear that the woman was not okay. During the clash, she had been sent flying onto a rock and had hit her head, blood now trickling from a large gash in the back of it. She had gone pale and limp on the floor, and Morrison could see that the pool of blood now spreading behind her head was a dark crimson.
I can't feel my legs.
Ah, shit, Nat. You're gonna be okay.
He reached down to his belt and opened up a small medical pouch on it, pulling out a bandage as he wrapped it around her head.
Can you keep the pressure on this?
Morrison reached down to his radio, pressing the emergency alert button to ping GPS coordinates to any nearby agents.
Control, Agent Morrison. Agent Diaz is down. Need immediate help. Over.
He then let go of the button and began to apply pressure to her head, twisting her slightly to look at him as he did so. He could see just from the expression on her face that she was weak and in a lot of pain.
Ben.
She started before her voice trailed off.
This is all your fault, Ben.
Then something strange happened. The blonde hair and younger features of Diaz were replaced with another face, almost twisting and merging into one. It took Ben a few moments to realise the shock of this twist catching him off guard. Then he understood exactly who he was looking at.
No. I tried. I tried to.
First it was me. You couldn't save me. Could you, Ben?
And now me. It's your fault, Ben.
The person lying in front of him said as she stared into Ben's eyes with a fire and intensity.
Lucy?
You killed me, Ben.
Morrison was jolted awake as the cargo plane hit turbulence. The BioSyn personnel in the cargo hold forced to steady themselves as the vehicle levelled out. His memory of being taken onto the plane was pretty hazy, but he knew that King had said something about needing to debrief him. What made him more uncomfortable was what was sat in the middle of the cargo hold. Secured in place by several hardpoints was a cage, and inside the cage was a blue and yellow animal which was all too familiar to Morrison, the Suchomimus. He felt anger swell in the pit of his stomach as he stared at the creature, reliving in his head the moments which had led to the death of Lucy Brown. He clenched his fist and the BioSyn operative sat next to him clocked onto him staring at the creature.
Slippery one to catch. Went deeper into the tunnel network, almost managed to find its way into one of the metro networks. Can't imagine the chaos which would have unfolded if it did. Luckily, we caught it before it got that far.
Why did you trank it?
Say that again?
I said, why trank it?
King's orders. Preservation of life is still the #1 priority. I thought you, of all people, would have understood.
The man trailed off as Morrison punched him, sending him sinking back into the chair as he cursed under his breath. Without thinking, Morrison unbuckled his harness and reached for the man's thigh, pulling a handgun from a holster as he climbed to his feet.
What the hell are you doing?
The man exclaimed as he reached for his own harness. Across the cargo hold, other BioSyn operatives could see the commotion and were beginning to unbuckle their harnesses and get to their feet. But Morrison was faster. He moved quickly in front of the cage, where an open end with a metal grate exposed the sleeping Suchomimus to him. The animal looked almost peaceful, but Morrison didn't care, raising his arm as he leveled the pistol at the animal's head.
You can't fire that in here.
One of the operatives exclaimed.
It'll bring the entire plane down with it.
Think about what you're doing, Agent Morrison. There's no going back from this.
Morrison stood for a few tense moments, the weapon feeling heavy in his hand. He cocked it back for a moment, his finger tightening slightly on the trigger, much to the dismay of the operatives around him. He wanted nothing more than to shoot this animal, to put it down, here and now. But there was one thought deep in his head which stopped him. One voice.
Remember, these animals aren't our enemy.
Lucy's voice echoed in Ben's head, and he teared up for a moment, lowering the handgun as he put his head in his hands. As the operatives escorted him back to his seat, the door to the cockpit opened, and a man in a similar black uniform walked in, climbing down a ladder to join him on the cargo deck. Howard King was slightly hard to distinguish to Morrison, his tears blurring his vision, but he could tell him immediately from his voice.
We're about to land at the Dolomites. You and I need to have a chat when we do, Morrison. Listen, I know you and I haven't always seen eye to eye, but this next phase is important, and I want you to be part of it.
The large cargo plane glided over snowy, sharp mountains and through layers of thick fog, before eventually coming to a landing point on a long strip of open land in the middle of a forest. The facility had clearly had some serious investment, as this wasn't a makeshift landing zone but a proper runway, complete with lights adorning either side of the runway itself. As the vehicle slowly came to a halt, an almost machine-like operation began to unfold, with ground crews in grey uniforms motioning for the nose of the vehicle to be opened as beige Jeep Gladiators began to approach the vehicle, clearly preparing to unload equipment. A large beige flatbed was backed up to the ramp of the cargo bay, and an internal mechanism began to move the cage from the centre of the plane directly onto the flatbed. Morrison watched, dumbfounded for a moment by the scale of the operation, and then watched as the cage was secured into place and the vehicle began to move off along the runway and onto a track which led through the forest beyond. As Morrison began to walk down the ramp, the scale of the operation became clear, with vehicles littering the runway and cargo being unloaded everywhere he looked. As he took the scene in and was hit by the cool mountain air, Howard King walked down the ramp and joined him.
Welcome to Italy! The Dolomite Mountains specifically.
It's so isolated. How does an operation of this scale run out of here?
With a lot of money. John Hammond got a lot of things wrong, but keeping the dinosaurs somewhere isolated was smart. It's what we intend to do here with our new sanctuary. We've been building it for years. Started small with a few of our own genetic samples, but now it's become a home for InGen assets out in the wild.
What kind of assets?
Everything you can imagine.
King said as he motioned to the cliffs which encased the valley.
We have an aerial deterrent system, ADS for short, like the system in place on Isla Nublar. Allows us to keep some aerial predators like Dimorphodon and Pteranodon within the valley. Also, we have a few of the animals from Sorn and Nublar. Rexes, Ankylosaurus, Parasaurophilus, Gallimimus. Even have a few of the animals which needed rehoming after the Mantaug Corp Island investigation was concluded.
Morrison took in the scenery for a moment and then turned, locking eye contact with King. His eyes darkened.
Where do I fit into this? The last thing I did was disobey a direct order.
That's true. But this next phase will be anything but conventional, Morrison. Dinosaurs are in the wild, for God's sake. Did you ever think we'd be dealing with something like this? BioSyn is going to need a little bit of out-of-the-box thinking to contain this thing, and I can't be doing all the creative thinking myself.
So you want me to continue to do the work I've been doing at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service? Help BioSyn from the inside?
No. This latest incident was the final nail in the coffin for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Well, while you were asleep on the plane, there was a press conference. The announcement was that the Department of Prehistoric Wildlife is taking over now. Your real job no longer exists, Morrison. It's extinct.
Morrison looked at the ground for a moment, a concerned expression crossing his face as he thought about Fran and his other colleagues.
Listen, it's why I want to offer you a new job with BioSyn.
Doing what?
Field agent. Doing exactly the kind of work you've been doing already, but reporting directly to me. I'm working on a few projects. Some I'm not even ready to present to the people in charge yet. You can help me complete those projects. Make a real difference.
I'm not so sure.
I think it's exactly what Brown would want you to be doing.
The last comment made something twinge deep in Morrison's heart. He wasn't sure whether to be angry, devastated, or both. He didn't have much time to process the statement as a helicopter flew overhead, coming to a hover over the landing strip before it touched down. Morrison looked at the helicopter and was taken aback by its design. Rotor blades on the side as well as on the top and rear. BioSyn really were the cutting edge when it came to technology. A door with the company's logo on the side slid open, and an older man wearing grey trousers and a blue turtleneck with spectacles and greying hair stepped out, accompanied by a much younger man wearing a pair of purple trousers and a button-up shirt. King motioned over to them.
Come on, there's people I need to introduce you to.
With that, for better or for worse, Morrison had been swept into a new kind of life. There was no more reporting to Fran Marshall, no more responding to incidents on behalf of the US Fish and Wildlife Service, and, as much as it pained him, no more Lucy Brown. Morrison was on his own now, an operative working solely for BioSyn. You have been listening to Tales from a Jurassic World. Ben Morrison voiced by Jared Ransom. Natalia Diaz voiced by Michelle Reed. National Park Control voiced by Jay Quinzel. Lucy Brown voiced by Ashley Friel. BioSyn Operative 1 voiced by Jurassic. BioSyn Operative 2 voiced by Jonah Reginek. Howard King voiced by Antonio Bustos. Music arranged and composed by Brooks Leiby. Intro and outro music performed by the famed Studio Orchestra. Sound effects from Epidemic Sound. Written, created and produced by Tom Jurassic. Tales from a Jurassic World follows BioSyn as they adapt to dinosaurs in the wild.